me tell you something today. When God places his hand of protection over a woman, no weapon formed against her can prosper. When the Most High shelters her under his wings, even hell itself has to back off. Because a woman covered by God walks in a divine authority, shielded not by fear, but by faith. And if you've ever wondered whether you're that kind of woman, here are 8 signs that you are protected by God from evil people. A woman protected by God doesn't rely solely on her natural senses to guide her relationships. She walks in spiritual discernment. That means she can see beyond what's being said, beyond what's being shown, and beyond the surface level charm. See, when the Spirit of God covers you, he doesn't just bless your ears. He sharpens your eyes. You begin to pick up on things other people miss. It's not about suspicion or paranoia. It's about being spiritually aware. There's a quiet alertness that settles in your spirit when something isn't right, even when everything looks perfect on the outside. Evil doesn't always come with a scowl or a threat. It often comes smiling, dressed in everything you thought you wanted. The enemy is strategic. He knows how to imitate what looks good, what sounds right, what feels familiar. But when you're protected by God, you're not moved by appearances. You don't just go by charisma. You look for character. You don't just listen for compliments. You listen for consistency, because you understand that deception is the devil's favorite tool, and flattery is often its handle. A protected woman learns how to test the spirit behind a person. That means she asks, what's driving this connection? What's the fruit of this relationship? Is this person pushing me closer to God or pulling me further away? She's not impressed by status or style. She's tuned into the spirit. That doesn't mean she walks around judging everyone. No, she walks around discerning. And there's a big difference. Judgment comes from pride. Discernment comes from the Holy Spirit. Sometimes discernment isn't loud. It shows up as a hesitation in your gut, a check in your spirit, a moment of stillness when everything else is rushing. You may not be able to explain it right away. You may not have proof or evidence, but something deep inside tells you, wait. And a protected woman listens to that voice. She knows how to pause and pray before she proceeds. She trusts that if God is showing her a red flag, even if it's small, it's still a warning. What makes this discernment powerful is that it's not learned through textbooks. It's forged in prayer. It's strengthened in worship. It's honed in those quiet moments with God where your spirit becomes sensitive to his. When you spend time in the presence of the Lord, you get to know his voice. And once you know his voice, you can recognize when another voice doesn't line up. That's protection. Some people might think you're being too careful or too distant. Let them talk. Because you know that God's protection sometimes looks like distance. It looks like walking away from something that seems right but doesn't feel right in your spirit. It looks like saying no when your flesh wants to say yes. That's not fear, it's wisdom. And wisdom is one of the highest forms of protection a woman can walk in. So, don't ignore that discernment. Don't apologize for it. That's heaven guarding your heart in ways you can't even see. There are moments in life when plans fall apart, doors slam shut, and opportunities vanish. And at first, it feels like rejection. But when a woman is protected by God, she learns to recognize these moments not as losses, but as divine interruptions. What looked like a breakdown was really a breakthrough in disguise. What felt like a closed door was actually God's hand holding it shut, shielding her from what she couldn't yet understand. Because when God protects his daughters, he doesn't just remove enemies, he reroutes paths. A woman covered by divine favor doesn't cry long over detours. She might feel the sting for a moment, but deep down, she knows that nothing happens by accident. When that relationship crumbles, when that friendship fades, when that job opportunity slips away, she understands that there is something she couldn't see, but God could. He saw the hidden intentions, the quiet manipulation, the subtle destruction that was waiting down the line. And because he loves her, he stepped in. He interrupted it before it could take root. Sometimes God's protection is not loud. It doesn't come with lightning bolts or angelic announcements. It comes in the form of sudden cancellations, unanswered calls, a door that just won't open no matter how hard you knock. And while the world calls it failure, faith calls it covering. God knows how to block what isn't meant for you sometimes before you even know it's a threat. That's why a protected woman doesn't panic when her plans shift. She pauses. She prays. And she trusts that heaven's detour is safer than her own direction. And here's what makes it even more powerful, the peace that comes with it. See, when God interrupts your plans, he doesn't leave you empty. He fills you with a quiet assurance that doesn't make sense to those around you. You should be anxious, but you're calm. You should be bitter, but you're thankful. That's not natural, that's supernatural. There's God whispering, I've got you. It's a divine confirmation that even though things didn't go the way you expected, they're still going exactly as he intended. There are times when a woman protected by God looks back and realizes just how close she came to danger, how near she was to falling into something that would have wrecked her soul. But God in his mercy stepped in. He caused confusion in the plans of others to bring clarity to her purpose. He delayed the meeting that would have led to heartbreak. He interrupted the connection that would have drained her spiritually. And it wasn't rejection. It was redirection. It takes spiritual maturity to see this. Not everything that's good to you is good for you. And not every opportunity is a blessing. That's why when God interrupts, it's a form of grace. He's not withholding. He's protecting. He's not punishing. He's preserving. And a woman walking in his covering has learned to welcome divine interruption because she knows her steps are being ordered and her path is being secured by the one who sees the end from the beginning. When God places his protection over a woman, he doesn't just cover her in the spirit, he also surrounds her in the natural. One of the clearest signs that a woman is protected by God is the presence of God-fearing people in her life. She's not walking through this world alone. She has a circle, a covering, a community that watches with her, prays for her, and holds her accountable. And that's not random. That's intent. God places the right voices in her life so she can recognize his will even when her emotions are loud. A woman under divine protection will find herself connected to people who sharpen her, not drain her. These are friends who don't just agree with everything, friends who will tell her the truth in love. Mentors who aren't impressed by her gifts, but concerned about her growth. Spiritual sisters who will intercede when she's under attack and celebrate her victories without jealousy. That kind of circle is a hedge, a wall against the schemes of the enemy. Evil thrives in isolation. The enemy loves to corner a woman, make her feel alone, make her think no one understands her, so he can whisper lies without interruption. But a woman surrounded by God-fearing people is never truly alone. When her strength is low, her circle lifts her up. When her vision gets blurry, someone in her life speaks clarity. When she's tempted to compromise, someone reminds her of her calling. That kind of community is not just support, it's spiritual warfare. These people are not always loud or flashy. Sometimes it's the friend who checks you with a text at the perfect moment. Sometimes it's the mentor who speaks one word that brings everything back into focus. Sometimes it's a prayer warrior in her church who calls out her name when she doesn't even know it. God will use his people to shield her in ways she didn't even ask for. Because divine protection is not always about angels and visions. Sometimes it's about relationships. And here's the thing, those relationships require stewardship. A woman protected by God doesn't take her circle for granted. She listens. She stays connected. She doesn't isolate herself when correction comes, because she knows correction from a God-fearing voice is protection in disguise. She doesn't always agree immediately, but she prays about it. She weighs it against the word. And more often than not, she realizes that God is speaking to her through the people he placed around her. There's a spiritual covering that comes through alignment. When you're aligned with people who fear God, who walk in wisdom, and who are led by the Spirit, you find yourself protected from decisions you would have made alone. You're kept from detours that charm the flesh but destroy the soul. And even when the enemy tries to sneak in through offense or pride, that circle helps hold the line. So when a woman is protected by God, you'll see it in who surrounds her. Not just anybody can get close. Not everyone is allowed in. God makes sure of that. Because when the right people are around her, the wrong ones can't linger long. Vision white peace walks with peace. And while woman is truly protected by God, there's something unexplainable about the way she carries herself in the middle of chaos. She walks with peace. Not just a temporary calm or surface level stillness, but a deep set, not because she doesn't feel the weight of the situation, but because she knows who's carrying the weight with her. Peace in the midst of an attack. Is it natural? It's supernatural. It's not something you work up. It's something that is given when your trust is in the one who goes before you. Evil people may rise up against her. Gossip may surround her. Betrayal might even come from someone close. But instead of falling apart, she leans into the presence of God, into the promises of his word, into the quiet confidence that says, no matter what they do, God has the final say. This kind of woman understands that God never promised a life without trials, but he did promise his presence in the midst of them. And when you know God is with you, You stop needing the approval or acceptance of people. You stop reacting out of fear, and you start responding from a place of authority. The enemy wants her to break down, to lash out, to step out of character, but the peace of God becomes her restraint. It guards her heart. It protects her mind. It keeps her anchored when the storm is designed to make her drift. Sometimes people will wonder why she's not panicking. They'll expect her to retaliate, to speak up, to defend herself in the face of slander. But a woman covered by God knows that silence is often her greatest weapon. Not because she's weak, but because she trusts that God is fighting battles she can't see. Peace gives her the ability to choose stillness instead of striving, to stay focused instead of becoming distracted by petty warfare. The enemy hates that kind of peace because it's proof that his tactics aren't working. It means his threats have been neutralized. His fiery darts have hit the shield of faith, and now they're just sparks fading in the wind. That's what protection looks like in the spiritual realm. It's not just about being removed from trouble, it's about being sustained through it. And that's what this woman has learned to do. Walk through fire without getting burned. Move through betrayal without bitterness. Smile in the face of opposition without compromising her joy. Her peace isn't dependent on circumstances. It's rooted in the presence of God. She knows the battle's real, but her victory is already secure. And so she sleeps when others are anxious. She worships when others are worried. She stays rooted when others run. That's the mark of a woman protected by God. Not that the storm never comes, but that her soul remains calm in the middle of it and faced with delight. A woman who is protected by God doesn't just go through battles. She comes out of them delivered. That doesn't mean she never faces hardship or conflict. On the contrary, she often walks through deep valleys, painful betrayals, and fierce spiritual attacks. But the evidence of God's protection isn't the absence of struggle. It's the outcome of it. When evil tries to trap her, God makes a way of escape. When people plot her downfall, God uses their own plans to elevate her. When the fire is turned up, she walks through it without being consumed. That's what divine deliverance looks like. Every battle she's faced, every tear she's cried, every dark moment she's endured, it all becomes part of her testimony. And here's the thing, the devil doesn't fight what isn't a threat. So when a woman is constantly under attack, it's often a sign of the anointing she carries. But what sets her apart is that no matter how hard the enemy hits, she doesn't stay down. She may stumble, but she doesn't quit. She may bend, but she doesn't break. Why? Because God always steps in. And when he delivers, he doesn't just pull her out, he brings her out better, stronger, and wiser. There's something powerful about coming out of a storm with more faith than you had before. That's what happens when God is your protector. The trials don't make you bitter, they refine you. The attacks don't destroy you, they strengthen your discernment. That man who walked away, that friend who betrayed you, that opportunity that slipped through your fingers, It wasn't the end. It was a setup for your next level. A woman protected by God begins to recognize that some losses were really victories in disguise. She's not defined by what she's been through. She's defined by how God brought her through. Every spiritual trap, every emotional ambush, every attempt of the enemy to break her, God turned it around. He used the enemy's weapons to shape her into a warrior. That's why her praise is loud. That's why her walk is bold. She's been delivered too many times to stay quiet. She knows what it's like to be on the verge of giving up, and she knows what it's like to be rescued at the last moment. And the deliverance isn't always physical, it's emotional, mental, and spiritual. Sometimes God delivers her from the need for validation, from the fear of rejection, from the lies she once believed about herself. Sometimes he delivers her from toxic habits and unhealthy attachments that she didn't even know were weighing her down. And when she comes out, people wonder how she's still standing. They see her peace, her strength, her joy, and they don't understand that it was birthed through fire. A woman protected by God knows this truth. Evil may come, but it can't stay. Attacks may rise, but they won't prosper. Because every time the enemy says this will take her out, God says, watch me bring her out. And he does. Over and over again. When a woman is protected by God, one of the most powerful things you'll notice is that her spirit remains pure, even in the presence of evil. She doesn't let bitterness build a home in her heart. She doesn't allow resentment to take root. Even when people lie on her, cheat her, use her, or try to tear her down, she chooses forgiveness. That's not weakness. That's strength in its highest form, because when you forgive, you don't lose power. You gain freedom. You release yourself from the grip of what tried to break you. The enemy thrives in unforgiveness. He wants to contaminate your heart with pain until it poisons your perspective. He wants to use offense like a wedge between you and your destiny. But a woman under God's covering sees through that strategy. She doesn't deny the pain, but she doesn't let it dictate her future either. She understands that holding on to anger might feel good in the moment, but it will rot the soul over time. So she forgives not because they deserve it, but because she does. She deserves peace. She deserves freedom. She deserves to walk forward unchained. The gift is not forgetting. It's releasing. It's choosing to say, you don't get to have power over my thoughts anymore. And this kind of woman has been delivered from the need for revenge. She doesn't plot how to get even. She doesn't waste time trying to prove a point. She lets God be her defender. She knows that the God who sees everything also settles everything. And when he says, vengeance is mine, she takes him at his word. So instead of fighting battles that aren't hers, she focuses on the purpose God has for her life. That's the beauty of a protected woman. She stays clean in spirit even when the world tries to get her dirty. Her heart isn't filled with malice. Her words aren't laced with spite. She refuses to become what hurt her. She chooses to rise above it. That doesn't mean she's naive. She knows who to love from a distance. She knows who can't have access anymore. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation with everyone. It means liberation for herself. And when God sees a woman who chooses mercy over malice, he honors that. He pours out more grace, more peace, more protection. This kind of forgiveness makes her untouchable in the spirit. Because the enemy can't use what no longer controls her, she becomes a threat. Not because she fights dirty, but because she walks holy. Evil may come for her, but it can't stick to her. The lies bounce off. The betrayal can't hold her back. The wounds don't define her. Why? Because her spirit is guarded by God and her heart is surrendered to him. A pure spirit doesn't mean a perfect life. It means a protected one. She can walk into rooms where her name has been slandered and still hold her head high. She can smile at people who once hurt her and mean it. That's not pretending. That's power. That's what happens when a woman refuses to let evil shape her character. Instead, she lets God shape her heart. The woman is protected by God. Her steps are not just random movements. Her steps are ordered. There is a divine rhythm to her life. Even when things seem uncertain, she might not always know where she's going, but she knows who's leading. And that makes all the difference. Evil people may try to trap her, deceive her, or pull her into chaos, but they can't stop what's been divinely arranged. Because when God orders your steps, he also clears the path. Even if he has to move mountains, close doors, or reroute you entirely. She doesn't walk like someone who's guessing. She walks with spiritual precision. That's not because she has all the answers, but because she trusts the one who does. Her decisions are not made out of desperation, they're made out of discernment. She seeks God before she moves. She prays before she commits. She listens before she leaps. And even when she takes a wrong turn, grace meets her there. God doesn't abandon her. He redirects her. That's what protection looks like in motion. Sometimes protection is in the delay. Sometimes it's in the divine pause. While others are rushing ahead, trying to make things happen in their own strength, this woman knows how to wait on the Lord. She's learned that being out of step with God is more dangerous than standing still. So she doesn't chase every opportunity. She doesn't run after every relationship. And she doesn't move just because others are moving. She stays in sync with the Spirit, and that obedience becomes her shield. The enemy loves chaos. He wants confusion to cloud her judgment. He wants her rushing into things she wasn't called to, getting entangled in assignments that aren't hers. But a protected woman walks in divine timing. That means she might miss what others call perfect timing, because she's following a higher clock. And what looks like delay is often God's design, because he knows what's ahead. He knows what's waiting down the road. And when he orders your steps, he's not just thinking about your now, he's protecting your next. There are moments when she looks back and realizes, if I had gone where I wanted to go, I would have ended up in a mess. But God blocked it. He shut it down. He didn't let it prosper. And at the time, it was frustrating, But now she can see it for what it really was, divine redirection. God kept her from the wrong place, the wrong people, and the wrong timing, because he had something better, something protected, something purposed. Even her setbacks are used for alignment. Even the detours turn into lessons. That's why a woman protected by God doesn't envy someone else's path. She knows hers is handcrafted by heaven. She doesn't panic when things don't happen on her timeline. She understands that if God is truly ordering her steps, then wherever she ends up will be exactly where she's meant to be. And nothing, no person, no scheme, no setback can block what God has already prepared for her. When a woman is protected by God, there's a spiritual authority that rests on her life. She doesn't have to announce it. She doesn't have to prove it. It shows up in the way she moves, the way she speaks, and the way she prays. Evil people can sense it. Demonic forces recognize it. She may not look intimidating in the natural, but in the spirit, she's a warrior. That authority isn't loud. It's rooted. It's not based on personality or position. It's based on intimacy with God. The more time she spends with him, the more power she walks in. This kind of woman doesn't fight like the world fights. She doesn't waste energy arguing with people who don't understand her purpose. She doesn't get distracted by every attack that comes her way. She's been taught to take it to the throne, not the timeline. When warfare rises, she doesn't panic, she prays. She doesn't just pray casually either. She prays with fire, with boldness, with scripture in her mouth and faith in her heart. That's why the enemy trembles when she kneels. Her words carry weight in heaven because her life is aligned with God's will. Their authority is not in how many scriptures she can quote, but in how much she believes them. When she speaks, she declares the word, not her worries. She's not just hoping things change, she's commanding it. She knows the power of speaking life. She knows how to bind and loose. She knows that her words can build or break, and she chooses to use them to build the kingdom. That kind of spiritual discipline doesn't just happen. It's cultivated in private, in moments when no one is watching but God. A woman under divine protection doesn't entertain every spirit. She's discerning. She recognizes when something is off, even if it looks right on the surface. She doesn't just listen with her ears, she listens with her spirit. She can walk into a room and sense the atmosphere. She can feel the shift when something is trying to infiltrate her peace. And instead of shrinking back, she rises up. That's spiritual authority. Not arrogance, not control, but God-given power to stand her ground and declare, not here, not today, not on my watch. Evil can't operate freely around her because her presence demands accountability. People can't just lie, gossip, or manipulate without something being exposed. That's not because she's trying to uncover them. It's because the light she carries makes it impossible for darkness to hide. And while some people may feel uncomfortable around her, others feel drawn to her. because they see the strength, the peace, and the favor that surround her. They may not understand it, but they respect it. That's what it looks like when God places his authority on a woman. She becomes a spiritual gatekeeper, one who watches, prays, and stands in the gap. She's not easily moved, not easily fooled, and not easily broken. Evil may try to approach her, but it won't succeed. Because when God has given a woman authority, no demon in hell can override it, and no person on earth can strip it. Her life becomes a testimony of what it looks like to walk covered, walk called, and walk in power.